Here marks the beginning of videotape number 2, taken in the deposition of Ms. Sibel Edmonds. Going back on the record, the time on the video screen is 12:29 and 38 seconds. Please continue.
Okay. We had a pen and during the break discussed it with counsel, and we've just agreed to withdraw that question, and basically because it was too broad and so forth, and it's probably not necessary. Let me ask you a different question, Ms. Edmonds. I understand that you executed an affidavit, or a declaration actually, in this case on August 5, 2009. Happy to show it to you. I've got one copy of it. I'm happy to show it to you if you'd like to see it, but I just have some questions about some of the things you said in the declaration. In paragraph 3 of your declaration, you say, I also obtained evidence that the government of Turkey had engaged in practices and policies that were inimical to American interest and had in fact resulted in both the direct and indirect loss of American lives. And do you recall saying that in your declaration?
Yes.
Can you tell me what practices and policies that you were referring to that were inimical to American interest?
There's several. One is practices and operations implemented from mid-1990s, at least until towards end of 2001 in Central Asia and Caucasus there. And these operations and practices included Islamization of the certain segments of those Turkic nations, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan. There are so many of them in that area, and setting up madrasas and bringing in, helping bringing. At the time, they were not referred to as Al-Qaeda until 2001, September 11. They were referred to as plain Mujahideens from Afghanistan and Pakistan into Central Asia, then to Turkey to give them passports, and then funnel them in 1997, 1998 to certain Eastern European countries and the Balkans. And also, I mean, it's very broad. I can go on for a long time about what practices and why they were against the security and the interests of the Americans and the lives.
Okay. Well, I don't want to burden you too much, but I would like as complete an answer as you can give us in terms of what you were referring to.
Those operations went until at least until September 2000, and again, for those operations, they corroborated and worked with certain U.S. persons who were involved in these operations. The other would be the illegally obtaining and selling U.S. military and military technology, and that includes weapons and nuclears, and even from foreign policy related secret or top secret information, and not only for Turkey, but passing this information to what they refer to as highest bidders, and whoever bid highest, whether these people were nation states or they were just individuals that they were pursuing under counterterrorism after September 11. That would be another example of activities that they were involved that were against the security and the interests of the Americans with cost in terms of lives.
Well, that was going to be my next question, is how do you connect what the Turkish government was doing to the direct and indirect loss of American lives?
One example of this would be with Brewster Jennings, for example, just selling that information and getting that information out in the hands of those foreign entities, including Pakistan. One of the things that that the CIA was asked for to right away do damage assessment. And one of the things that came out of it was the damage assessment included damage to asset, both in terms of effectiveness, which was neutralized, and the Brewster Jennings Front Company for CIA had to be immediately absolved that summer after this information was obtained. But also there were assets and U.S. People who were compromised because of that by the within these foreign governments. That's another. And the third one that I started talking about were helping these individuals come to first Azerbaijan, then Turkey, and these are certain Mujahideen groups starting from 1995, 1996. They were given Turkish passports. In some cases, they were given Azerbaijani passports, and Turkey played a very active and important role in taking these people and moving them into Europe, and some of those people actually ended up in the United States.
Okay. And I think you indicated earlier that the Turkish government, to your knowledge, was providing support to what was once called the Mujahideen,
Correct.
which is now called Al-Qaeda.
Correct.
And has it generally been publicly reported that Al-Qaeda was behind the 9/11 attacks?
Correct.
And that cost American lives?
Correct.
How else has, to your knowledge, the Mujahideen or Al-Qaeda that Turkey was supporting cost American lives?
September 11 and the other category I talked about was the intelligence and identifying assets or the front companies. The third category that involved narcotics activities, and that was, at least until I left, these Turkish people, and some of them are directly connected to Turkish intelligence and Turkish military in the United States. They played a very significant role in bringing in heroin from sourced from Afghanistan to Turkey, but from Turkey into both the United States, but also directly to Belgium.
So,
large quantity, very, very large quantity of heroin.
So if I were to say that if I were a congressperson and I'm taking money from the Turkish government, either directly or indirectly, would it be a fair statement that I'm taking money from a government that has engaged in policies and practices that have cost American lives?
Correct.
Are you familiar with a person named Fethullah Gulen, G-U-L-E-N?
Yes.
Can you tell us who that is?
My information is mainly about his activities and issues that were again done from late 1990s until I left, and then after that it will be known activities here in the United States. He was a religious activist figure in Turkey, and he landed on Turkish government's wanted list and was going to be persecuted for wanting to throw Turkish secular government, replace it with Islamic Sharia kind of type of government. Mm-hmm. And when he was wanted in Turkey for that, and he was going to go to jail, persecuted, he actually got on the plane and came to the United States, and he was given immediately visa to stay in the United States. And he's been in the United States until now, as far as I know. He has since established more than 300 madrasas in Central Asia and what he calls universities that have a front that is called moderate Islam, but he is closely involved in training like militia Islam, who are brought from Pakistan and Afghanistan into Central Asia, where his madrasas operate. And his organization's net worth is estimated to be around $25 billion. He has opened several Islamic universities in the United States. As I said, it's being promoted under moderate Islam. It is supported by certain U.S. authorities here because of the operations in Central Asia. But what they have been doing since late 1990s is actually radical Islam and militarizing these very, very young, from the age 14, 15, by commandos they used, and this is both commandos from Turkish military, commandos from Pakistani ISI in Central Asia and Azerbaijan, and after that they bring them into Turkey, and from Turkey they send them through Europe to Europe and elsewhere. Up until 1999, the Turkish both government, also paramilitary units in Central Asia, they operated under the groups that call themselves Grey Wolves ultranationalists, and their method was, you know, assassination of certain leaders in these Central Asian countries and militarizing, but not through Islam. But after this scandal that took place in Turkey, Susurluk scandal, they were no longer supported by certain segments in the United States, and instead, some of our people involved in foreign policy, they supported the Islamic movements of Gulen in those Central Asian countries in order to counter Russia as far as the energy sources are concerned in those countries.
How is it, if you know, how is it that Gulen is allowed to be in the United States visa? Let me ask a different question.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Is that an individual, based on what you've told me, that you would consider a threat to U.S. interest?
100%, absolutely.
And if you know, how is it that he's allowed to be in the United States?
Because part of what he has in terms of a deal with certain segments in the United States is furthering the interests of the people who are interested in the energy sources in Central Asia, and that is the whether it's oil or whether it's natural gas, and basically it's a fight. The best way to describe it is Cold War is not over. It's a continuation of Cold War over those nations, and what we did in Afghanistan in early 1980s with Mujahideen, we have been doing now in Central Asia by using Islam and extremism and these madrasas and Pakistani and Afghani elements to tilt certain stuff in terms of those resources to certain business interests here.
Did you say that Gulen had set up schools in the United States?
Yes.
Are some of those in Cincinnati, if you know?
I'm not sure. I know of some in Texas. I know one in Virginia, but I don't know. They are multiplying and they're spreading rapidly, his Islamic madrasas or universities everywhere. So I haven't kept track of the locations. I don't know.
I assume that, well, let me just ask you, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot. If you can't answer, just tell me. Would you tell me who the congresswoman is that we...
I would have, and it wouldn't be because of classification, I don't believe. If in case this congressional person did not bend under the pressure, in case I just don't want somebody's innocent person's reputation destroyed, because I don't know if this person complied with whatever she happened to be blackmailed later. I think it's
All right, well, that's fair enough. From what you've told me, that the people you've identified, the people that you've talked about today, you're certain about.
Yes.
And what you've told me today about those people is not based on speculation.
No.
Give me one moment, please. Are you familiar with reports that Turkish nationals were being supported or acting as suicide bombers against U.S. troops overseas?
Not directly.
Any doubt in your mind that the Turkish government has cost American lives?
No.
Caused the loss of American lives?
No. And not only American lives, even in other countries, and some innocent American lives too, yes.
Any question in your mind, based on everything that you've experienced, that the Turkish government has infiltrated members of Congress to get their support against or their opposition to the Armenian genocide resolution?
None whatsoever.
I've asked you about members of Congress, but I haven't asked you about staff. Are you aware of senior staff from members of Congress who've also been corrupted by the Turkish government?
Absolutely.
Can you identify them?
The pictures are there.
No. Who is Larry Franklin?
He was an analyst working for Pentagon who was indicted on charges on espionage and passing information to, I believe, Israeli lobby AIPAC. Active participants in ATC, American Turkish Council event, and with these Turkish operatives.
Okay. Anything else? I think that's all I have. I think others may have some questions for you, but I do want to thank you again for your patience and for coming today. I appreciate it.
I have many questions, but I don't know whether you want to take a break there. I suspect the questions may be at least an hour to 2 hours, so you need to estimate whether you want to break now or whatever you want to do, and whatever a council wants to do as well.
Yeah,
If you want to take a break, fine.
How long for?
You decide. I'll accommodate whatever you want, and why don't you talk to council here? Whatever you
well,
want to do is
I think
fine.
it was first I always ask the witness how much time she wants, then I ask the court reporters because they're captains here.
Yeah.
So I always try to, yes. Yeah, why don't we go off the record first? That's a good idea.
Going off the record, the time on the video screen is 12:46 and 37 seconds.